I'm a first year medical student at I'm a first year medical student at UCL. In my UCAT, so I did it 2 years ago now. I got 3, 4, 10 band one. I don't know what the equivalent is right now, because obviously they've removed AR. But I did score in the top 1 percentile for my year group. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen. Sorry guys about the delay. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. Um, Let me know if you guys can see that. Okay. I'm just gonna take it as a yes that you can see my screen.
Yes, yes, we can
So
see your
before I
screen.
start the presentation, a bit about this session. Okay, a bit about this session, obviously, because I'm gonna have to go through all three sections. Um, each like sort of run through of each section is going to be like decently brief, but obviously I'm going to give you some tips, some strategies, etc., and that will hopefully help you guys. So yeah, um, just gonna give you guys a quick session overview in terms of what each section's about. You guys will probably have heard this numerous times now, so I'm gonna keep it pretty brief. Um, but obviously we've got verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, situational judgment. I've given you question number, like the number of questions, and I've also given you guys the time and roughly how much you should be spending for each question. Now this per question time thing. I want you guys to take it with a pinch of salt because often a lot of students what they do is they hold themselves to this like 23 seconds per question or 43 seconds per question, whatever it is, um, for each question. Um, I don't actually recommend doing this because when you get so fixated on time, like to this level of precision, often you just lose your accuracy because you're just constantly looking at the time. Instead, what I did is maybe for like VR, I gave myself like two timing checkpoints. For example, at 10 minutes, I wanted to be maybe like 4 sets through. At 20 minutes, I wanted to be 10 sets, maybe 9 sets through. When you give yourself like 2 or 3 times to stick by, um, you can often focus on the accuracy of the question a bit easier. So yeah, take the seconds per question with a pinch of salt. Another thing is you guys will already know this. There's no negative marking, so a question should never, ever, ever be left blank, ever. Um, a little thing, if you're ever stuck, you have to make a completely uneducated guess. You genuinely don't know. Put C, because I think statistically, they say that C is the most common answer, in the UCAT by a bit. So just that's if it's an uneducated guess, like you have nothing to go on. Um, Okay, let's move on. So we're going to start with VR because it's the first section. A couple things about VR. It's very mentally exhausting. It's the one that they put at the beginning because they know that people find it exhausting mentally. There's a lot of effort involved. And often, like, I think this is the make or break section. People do find VR harder, and because of that, they often like do VR. And sometimes for some people, after doing VR, they won't think they perform that well and they'll let it affect the other sections. Please don't do that. If you don't do well in a section, it's completely fine. Treat each section as its own, and just move on, mentally as well. Okay, so a little bit about VR 11 passages, 44 questions. We've got the different question types. We've got true, false, can't tell, and then we've obviously got the elimination style, like choose the best answer. I'm not going to go into too much detail because you guys should know what I'm talking about. What I am going to talk about in more detail is the strategies that should be used. Um, so my main thing is everyone thinks they should try and answer all 11 passages to the full like utmost accuracy. This doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because VR is so time pressured. So what I told myself going in is I would try to do 8 to 9, maybe 10 passages with proper accuracy, and then for the other two, maybe three, I would educated guess them. I'm not saying they would be complete guesses. I'm saying I would educated guess them. So maybe it meant that I'd have to like skim read instead of like properly reading it, or I'd have to use like I don't know, extra techniques to just put educated guesses and make a few assumptions. Um, the reason I did that is because I knew that if I could concentrate on those 8 to 9 easier questions, then my accuracy, my score would go up. Um, so yes, um, can you guys still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Um, okay, hopefully. Okay, so another thing that you guys need to understand, the ability to look at a question in VR and just know straight away if this is one you're going to skip or whether it's one you're going to attempt to first run through is so, so important. Because the worst thing you can do, not just VR, actually in like QR and stuff as well, is look at a set, think, okay, this looks decently easy, it's on a information that I like, I'm going to attempt it. You get to question two, you realize actually this is a lot harder than I think, I'm going to skip it. So you've attempted two questions, you've skipped two questions. You have to come back to that. That means rereading the whole text again, redoing everything. That's a massive waste of time, especially for a section that's so time pressured. So you should be looking at a question and being able to do all four questions in that set. Um, that should be your guys' aim. So learn about what you enjoy. Like say, for example, I'll give you a personal example. For me, I found texts easier when they were true, false, can't tell. I just thought they were a bit more straightforward. I thought they were more straightforward when the information was blocked out into paragraphs as opposed to like a massive paragraph. Things like massive long history text I didn't like. So as soon as I saw that, as soon as I saw a text within like 2 seconds, I knew, am I going to attempt this? Am I going to skip it? And based on that, I decided the 8 to 9 that I would do my first run through, and then the two or three that I would educated guess and come back to. Um, okay. Now, in terms of um the actual strategy with VR, you guys will be aware that there's probably two strategies. Some people keyword search, so that's looking at the keyword in the question and then trying to find that keyword in the text. Now, other people read the whole text. So what they'll do is they'll skim read the text, not skim read, like actively read the text, then try and answer the questions based on that. A little bit about what I personally believe about each strategy. I think reading the text is better. I'll give you a couple reasons why. I did keyword search for a lot, but then I realized that sometimes the keyword search would come up once, like say paragraph one. It'll then come up again in paragraph three, and the second instance would negate the first instance. When I didn't have a full understanding of the text, I actually found it a lot harder to understand what was going on. When I started reading the questions, sorry, when I started active reading the text, when I say active, guys, I don't just mean reading the text because the worst thing you can do is read it and then not understand it and then have to reread it. When I say actively read it, I mean actively process what's going on, like making mental maps. The way I did this is at the end of each paragraph, I made a quick mental note in my head of what that paragraph was about. That meant that I was actively compartmentalizing and reading the information as opposed to just reading for the sake of reading. When I started doing this method, I felt that my accuracy improved a lot. I felt that I was doing a lot better. I was getting more questions right. That being said, I also was aware that my time was being slightly compromised. So, what I actually ended up with as a method was for certain question types, like the harder ones, I would be actively reading the text, making those mental maps. So, at least I knew where in the text the answer was in. Sorry, where in the paragraph the answer was in. And then for some of the easy ones, I was keyword searching. That's what I ended up doing. Um, so be aware that you don't have to do one sort of strategy for every single question type. You can mix it up a bit to get the best balance between accuracy and time. Okay, the next thing that I just want to briefly talk about, this is important in the UCAT in general. We get so told in school to like always be checking your work and stuff. There's not something to do in the UCAT, never systematically recheck and stuff. If you think you found the correct answer option, just select it, move on. Maybe flag it, but don't like just then check the other ones to make sure they're wrong. If you think you found the right one, just because it's a massive waste of time. We don't have time for that. Okay. I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the harder question types that do come up. They're not the majority of questions, they're in the minority, but it's important to know how to do them as well. So qualifiers, what are qualifiers? Qualifiers are things like some, may, often, usually. Um, those are soft qualifiers. Then we've got extreme qualifiers like all, never, only, always, stuff like that. Um, Especially in your true, false, can't tell, but also in the other question types. If the question, for example, says all cars are black, the ones with extreme qualifiers are much, much more likely to be false or can't tell. They're never likely to be true because it's so easy to disprove an extreme qualifier. If you have one example, for example, that's where a car is not black, then it's just going to be false. Um, and then soft qualifiers are things like some, may, often. They're more likely to be true because they acknowledge that it's not all of them, it's some of them. What I'm essentially saying is, you know how I told you guys that for some questions you're gonna have to make educated guesses, you don't have time to read the whole thing. If you see a question and it says all something, 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 just put false, even if you haven't had the full opportunity to read the text, because that's just what it's more likely to be. Okay, you'll also get some questions like author's opinion questions. My biggest tip for this, guys, is so the question will be like, what do you think the author's opinion is? And they'll give you four options. My biggest tip is always just check the final paragraph. For some reason, from having done so much like VR practice myself, I've noticed that author's opinion tends to always be in the last paragraph. So just go to that and be aware of the tone, how ideas are introduced, which side of an argument an author takes. The final thing, guys, that I've already alluded to is this whole concept of dispersion and contradiction. Sometimes a keyword will appear more than once, and the second instance of it will either negate or clarify the first. So if an answer seems too obvious, just double read the text. Just make sure there's not an instance where it's like, um, the keyword is there again. Okay, I'm gonna end my key tips and traps with VR on never use outside knowledge or stereotypes to make inferences. Stick strictly to the passage. Such a common trap. They'll bring in something that's so blatantly obvious and we all know it's true, but it's actually not mentioned in the text, so the answer is can't tell and it's not true. They will do that so often. Very common trap because they want people to see that and put true. So don't fall into that group of people. Just make sure you don't make any stereotypes or use outside knowledge. Okay, what we're gonna do is I've got a question, but I think I'm gonna redo the order of how I present the session. I think we'll do all the questions at the end. Um, so I'm just gonna move on to DM now. Um, okay, what we'll do at the end as well is I'll have some time for some questions. So if you have any questions about VR or anything, just make a note of them and we can address them at the end. Okay, DM. So it is a time generous section. 35 questions, 37 minutes. That being said, there's different question types. So it's not like VR where there's only like three question types. There's a lot more. We've got syllogisms, logic puzzles, Venn diagrams, interpreting information, evaluating arguments, and some probability. So different strategies required for different questions. So a lot of time can be spent on improving DM as a section. My biggest tip for you guys, if you're struggling with how to improve DM, find your order. So a lot of people are under the impression that you have to do DM in the order it's given. So it starts off with syllogisms, then it moves to logic puzzles, then it moves to evaluating arguments, then it moves to interpreting information, then all the probability stuff. People are under the assumption you have to do it in that order. You don't. Um, Decide what works for you. Keep in mind a few things. Syllogisms are worth 2 marks, and so are the interpreting information ones in the middle. So out of like I think it's 38 marks available in DM, that's 20 of the marks. So it's a massive, massive chunk of the marks, over 50% of the marks. So that's something you need to prioritize getting good at if you're not already doing that. For me, my approach to DM was I always started with syllogisms, the things at the beginning, and then I moved to the interpreting information ones in the middle. So the other like 2 mark questions, because I knew I wanted to prioritize them. I knew I wanted to have as much time as possible with them because they are worth 2 marks. After that, I moved to evaluating arguments because I knew they were pretty straightforward, not time consuming at all. Then the Venn probability questions, and then finally I did logic puzzles at the end. The reason I did that is because logic puzzles often are like pretty hard, pretty time consuming. There are often about 5 logic puzzles in a whole DM set. And for me, I was fine with sacrificing maybe 2 or 3 marks on logic puzzles um, to be able to prioritize other questions. Remember, this is not like school. 1 mark on the easiest question in the UCAT is equivalent to 1 mark on the very hardest question in the UCAT. So it's not about what it's about working smart, not working hard, choosing the easy questions, prioritizing them, and leaving the hard ones to the end. So this is the order that I ended up with, the one I've written down for you guys. But test whatever you want, try different things. This was not the order that I like always did. Um, I would often like change up my order. I would do different things. And it's the one that I was set on at the end because of trying different things. So try different things, adjust to what works for you guys. Try it time, try it untime, see what gives you the greatest accuracy, the best time, etc. Um, so yeah. Yeah, I was fine with sacrificing logic puzzles because even though I knew I could do them, but it would take me like 2, 3 minutes. What's the point? So yeah. Syllogisms are highly valuable. Already alluded to this, but like finalizing your method for syllogisms is so important, and also the ones in the middle. So some people, there's different methods actually. Some people do this Venn diagram method. Some people do this thing called the arrow method. Some people just internalize the information at the end. What I ended up on was the internalization method. So I just look at it and having done so much syllogism practice, I could kind of just like in my head work out what the answer was. But often there's different methods, guys. So find one that works for you. Um, if you want to like learn more about each method, there's a lot of YouTube videos. There's a YouTuber called Emil Eddy. If you guys haven't already heard of him, he like explains how he does DRM really well. I used to watch a lot of his videos. So just get a good method that works for you for syllogisms. If you want to prioritize anything in DM, it should be the syllogisms, the interpreting information questions, just because they are the bulk of the marks. And I worked out from pretty quickly actually that getting a good start with this and a fast and accurate start shaped my whole section. Whether I did good in DM was purely dependent on like how good I did with these at the beginning. Um, so yeah, I already talked about this, but logic puzzles time consuming. So I was fine with losing a few marks, but saving a bank of time. Okay. So I'm gonna choose. I've picked out two question types to talk about in a bit more detail. So those are syllogisms and evaluating arguments, just because I think they're easily improvable. With syllogisms, always take the stem as fact. So always track relationships between groups. Um, what this means is often there's nonsense sets like all Iggles are Piggles, or some like Piggles are like Miggles, whatever. Like it's very hard to process in your mind because they're words we've not heard of. When you start analyzing the relationships as opposed to the actual things, it helps a lot. And knowing like the directions in which things go. For example, if it's telling me that all all cars are vehicles, then the reverse of that statement is some vehicles are cars. So if it telling me all cars are vehicles, some people think the reverse is all vehicles are cars. It's not like that. If all cars are vehicles, then it might say that in the stem, and then in the question it might say, are all vehicles cars? And you would put no because it's some vehicles are cars. So just knowing and being aware of those relationships helped me a lot because I didn't actually have to look at what Iggles or Piggles were because I just could see the some, the all, the none, and know what like how the relationships worked, etc. Um, so yeah, after doing a lot, I just was able to internalize them. So if you can get to that stage, then please do. Just because having to draw out arrow methods and like Venn diagrams is time consuming. Um, watch out for extra information. This is more about the interpreting information ones in the middle, so like the more narrative, more data ones. Um, so yeah, watch out for extra information, watch out for generalization, things not mentioned, often a sign the answer is no. Okay. So, gonna talk a bit about the evaluating arguments ones now. So if you don't know what I mean when I say that, the question is something like, should all fast food be banned in schools to improve the health of their students? Something like that. It'll give you yes because of this, and then no, no. And you have to choose the best answer option essentially. Um, my tips with this, identify the action and the outcome. So the action is what they want to do, and the outcome is what they want to do it for. So in the example I just gave you, the action is banning fast food. The outcome is to improve the health of their students. Um, the answer option you choose should directly address the outcome. So it should tell you yes because, and then directly address the outcome. It should have the fewest assumptions and it should directly address all parts of the question. So it can't be too specific, can't be too broad. For example, if one of the answer options was yes, fast food should be banned because on a population level it improves the health, that's not right because it's too general, it's not specific to the students. So it should address all parts of the question. Um, it can't be too specific, can't be too broad, should address all parts of the question. A common traps with um these evaluating argument questions. Correlation does not equal causation. You guys will know this from science, but just because this led to this, it doesn't mean that that directly caused that. There could be external factors. Just because it's happened in the past, it's natural, does not justify it. Circular reasoning, this is a really common one. It'll say like, so should fast food be banned in schools to improve the health of children? Then the answer option will be yes, because when you ban fast food, it does improve the health of children, or like something like that. It's just rewording the whole stem, right? It's not offering anything new. That's what circular reasoning means, and it's no. So these are common traps with that. So we're not gonna do, yeah, we're gonna do the questions at the end. Um, Okay, so I'm gonna now move on to QR. So a few things with QR. Generally, I felt like this is such an improvable section. For those of you that are struggling with QR right now, like it's one to get good at pretty quickly. Just a few things. People tend to be like decently good at maths, those that sit the UCAT. What people find hard is perfecting their format, perfecting the strategy, because being good at maths is not enough. With QR, it's literally, as a section, it's literally the definition of working smart, not hard. Um, like just because you're good at maths, like you can still not do amazing in QR. So just like I don't know. It is improvable. I'll talk about what I mean right now. Hopefully help you guys. Um, so yeah, 36 questions, 26 minutes. Most of it's GCSE level maths. So like even if you guys don't do A level, like you should still be able to access all the questions. The challenge, yeah, it's speed and like interpreting the data efficiently. It's not actually the difficulty of the questions. If everyone had infinite time, like everyone would do good in QR. Like it's not about the difficulty. It's about just really like working smart, like looking at efficient ways to tackle it. Um, for example, I'll give you a little example. Always look at the answer options before working through a question because, for example, if you look at the answer options and then you see the answer options are like um 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, um, you can just round in the calculations that you're doing. If you round and then you get the answer as 1,200, you know straight away the answer is 1,000. It can't be 10,000 because it's too far away. Um, these are little things that just help you improve like speed and time. Um, the way I always put it to like my other students is QR it's not like maths like A level GCSE where you have to get the most accurate answer and then write it down to like three decimal places, whatever. Because of the fact that it's multiple choice, you don't have to get to the answer. You have to get close enough to the answer that you can just say with assurance that you've picked the correct option, um, essentially. Um, okay, so a little like personal anecdote. Generally, I was really good at maths in school, and I wasn't performing well in QR like near the beginning of the of my preparation. I was like wondering like what's going wrong because like clearly like something's missing. Um, I think the thing that like generally like took my score from here to here with QR was literally as soon as I saw a difficult question, just skipping it immediately. Like as soon as like I mentioned this with QR, but the ability to look at a question and know within 2 seconds, am I skipping it or am I doing it is so crucial. Because like you think, okay, this is easy, you attempt two questions, then you get to the other two questions, you realize actually this is very hard. You then skip it. It means you have to come back to it and then you have to re-understand the whole set. It's a massive waste of time and it's time you don't have. Um, So I put here invest time once you've decided a question is worth it, and you must complete the whole set. So complete all four questions or zero questions and then come back to it. Don't do like two or three. Um, but yeah, what noticed my score like just shoot up. As soon as you see a hard question, skip it immediately. Hard questions meaning complicated calculations, multi-step calculations, complicated tables, conversions involved, anything like that, flag it, skip it, come back to it. That being said, take it with a pinch of salt because you might get to like question 30 and think like, oh, I still have like 20 minutes left or like 15 minutes left. The reason you have so long is because you've skipped so many questions. Um, so that's fine. Um, like it's fine to skip questions as soon as you see them. But take it with a pinch of salt. Like, always force yourself to go quicker. This is another thing with QR. Like, I would always constantly tell myself to go quicker, um, because I'm aware I've skipped questions. I need to come back to them. But they'll often put very easy questions at the end of the subtest, and they'll start off with the hard questions because they know that, like, people that aren't working smart about it will not get to the end. Um, because they would have like wasted so much time on the hard questions. They wouldn't have got to those easy questions. So don't fall into that group of people. Make sure you get to the end because often the easy questions will be at the end, and then come back to all the ones you've skipped. And that's what got my score from like the 650, 700s to like the 850, 900s. Um, okay, another thing is this next tip is very, very person dependent. So you need to work out what works for you. For me, I thought the calculator was a massive faff. Like I learned how to use the calculator. I learned how to use all the memory functions, how to store numbers in memory, etc. But generally, I just thought it was a faff. Like I thought the reason I thought it was a faff is because obviously it's not like our like Casio school calculators. Like if you type one number in wrong, you have to do the whole calculation again. You can only store one number, so if you forget to clear your memory, then there's like you can't store it because you have to clear the memory. So it's just I thought it was a faff. I tried to use mental maths as much as I could. Um, and if I wanted to have a number for a future calculation, I would write it down on my keyboard. Although, like, sorry, not my keyboard, on my whiteboard. Although I know that that might take like 1 or 2 seconds more, I thought it was worth it because at least I would always have that number on my whiteboard. I didn't have to like faff about with a calculator, and like retype numbers and stuff. Um, a big thing you might have to calculate like a total or something in question one, of the set of four. Often, if it's like a total or like a big number that's required a lot of work, sometimes you might need that number in like set say question four of that set. So if I was calculating a big number, like even if I didn't need to write it down, I just would in case it came in handy. It just saved me having to do like a whole long calculation again. Um, so yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna um do a few QR key tips. Um so yeah. Okay, so these are common topics that come up. I think I actually forgot to put this in the PowerPoint, but I'm just gonna say it out loud. Um I always recommend to students to check the answer options before they do the calculation. So obviously understand the STEM, understand the information, but before you actually do any calculations, just look at the question, then look at the answer options. The reason being is, say like all the answer options ended in a different number, like one, two, three, four, and five, and then you have to do a massively long like addition or something. Instead of doing that thing in the calculator, I just thought to myself, why don't I just add up the units column, like know what the answer should end in, and say the answer should end in a two. I can just put whatever answer ends in a two. Um, I didn't do the whole answer. I didn't do the whole calculation. That's saving me time because I can add up units in my head. I don't have to use a calculator, which is a faff. I don't have to type up massive long numbers, and I can get to the answer without actually have getting to the answer, which is what I mean when I say like just get to something that you know with assurance you've got the correct answer. You don't have to actually get to the answer. Um, but yeah. Um, can't tell traps. So often, sometimes in questions, one of the answer options will be can't tell. The reason it will be can't tell if there's like missing units, insufficient data, false assumptions, stuff like that. Um, and I already talked about like QRs about efficiency and using like tips and tricks to just get yourself to an answer quicker. Um, so for example, like a little thing that I quickly noticed when I was doing my UCAT is like if I'm going from say 5 to 10, that's doubling a number, so that's a 100% increase. It makes sense, right? Like going doubling is you're increasing a number by 100%. Therefore, tripling is increasing by 200%, and then quadrupling is increasing by 300%. So if the last stage of a calculation for me was like, what is the percentage increase between 64 and 16? Like what a lot of people will be doing is they'll be putting in their calculator, okay, 64 minus 16 divided by 16 times 100, whereas I'll immediately spot, hang on, that's times by 4, 300% increase, put 300%, move on. It's just things like that that save a lot of time. Other things that save time is knowing key percentages, knowing key like things. So knowing that 3 divided by 8, 3/8 is 0.375 or 37.5%. Um, knowing that 2/3 of an hour is like 0.6667, something like that. Just having to know them avoids calculator use. So little things like that. Um, okay, we're gonna go back to this. Okay. The final thing, guys, the final question you talk about is situational judgment. So, for those of you that don't already know, it's scored differently to the three other sections. So it's not sort of a numerical score. It's assessed in bands, so band 1 to 4. You guys should be aiming for band 1 to 2, band one, because a lot of universities do consider bands. Some don't, some do. So it's best to just put yourself in the best position possible. Get a band one or a band two. In terms of the format, it's 69 questions, 26 minutes. It's grouped into scenario sets. So there'll be 3 to 6 questions for each scenario. It's not time pressured as a section. It really isn't. This is not the section to be worrying about time. That being said, um, you need to be like having good strategies in place to just be accurate. It's a bit like syllogisms in the sense that you can get partial marks if you're like close enough to an answer. Um, so yeah, don't neglect SJT. A lot of people do because they're so worried about their numerical score. But a lot of universities will like actually like numerically rank candidates and like put their SJT band into that ranking. So don't neglect it. Yeah. Okay, there's two main question types. That is rate the importance of a consideration. So it goes very important, important, of minor importance, and not important. So the question will be, it'll give you a scenario and then it'll be like, how important is it for, say, I don't know, Tom to take this into consideration? It'll tell you what the consideration is, and then you rank them. And then the other main question type is rank based on appropriateness. So how appropriate is this response, or how appropriate is this action? Then you're going to put it's very appropriate, then it goes appropriate but not ideal, then it goes um very inappropriate. I can't remember the last one. It's something like not appropriate. It's something like it's inappropriate but not awful. That's what it is. Um, so those are the question types. Yeah, there's partial credit, so don't ever leave something blank, but that's any question in the UCAT, never leave anything blank. Take each question on its own. A lot of people fall into this common trap of they'll read the scenario and then they'll see like the action and they'll think, okay, this is really good, it must be very appropriate. Then they'll move to question two and they'll realize, okay, this is not as good as the first one. So it must automatically be like appropriate but not ideal. But that's not the case. Just because two actions are different doesn't mean they both can't be very appropriate. So don't compare things in a set. Take each question on its own merit and sort of answer it in isolation. Okay. I'm gonna okay. Okay, I'm gonna talk a bit about strategy with SJT. This is really important because a lot of people actually kind of just take SJT as it is. They'll read a question and then think, okay, I'm just gonna put this as the answer, based off what I roughly know. But it isn't the way to go about SJT because your accuracy does waver. Um, so a few things that help me, which I'm gonna go over right now, is always, always work out what the main issue is in a scenario. The reason SJT exists as a section is because the GMC want to know if your understanding of the key ethics involved in medicine, the key themes, and if you are aware of like how to tackle each of those. Um, a lot of people like actually read GMC's Good Medical Practice for medical students or for doctors, for SJT. So if you have no awareness at all on any of this, then that's like where to start. Um, but so like I found this acronym called Cheap Pet, and it basically covered like the most important issues kind of tackled in SJT scenarios. And for each scenario I read, I I tried to think like, what are they asking from me? Like why have the GMC or the UCAT put this question in? Because they want me to be aware about this issue. They want me to be aware about patient safety or something. And that often kind of dictated the angle to take with how you're answering. So as soon as you can identify what the core issue is testing, you can think what the ideal response would be. So for example, if there was an issue about confidentiality, before looking at the what it's giving you, I always thought like, okay, if I was a medical student, if I was a doctor, what is the ideal response? What is the best thing to do? I could kind of compare what they've given me to that. Um, Another thing is, um, I think this is what you should take from it. And it's probably like the thing that just helped me the most. Two things. Does it answer the main problem? And then check for mitigation. What that means is, for the appropriateness questions, does what they've given me answer the main problem? And then mitigation is there something slightly in there that makes it worse or less worse than it could be? So if you guys don't understand what that means, I'm going to give you an example. So say you've got like you're a junior doctor, you've got a colleague that's always turning up late to its clinic, late to his or her clinics, and you've noticed that patients are often waiting for ages because they're always late. It doesn't affect their clinical competentness, so they're still like doing what they need to be doing, but they're just late. So it's a professionalism issue. So immediately I think, okay, the core issue is professionalism. Um, and then the answer option is, how appropriate is it to escalate to a senior supervisor? So I'm immediately going to think, okay, does it answer the main problem? Okay, yeah, it does answer the main problem because as soon as I escalate it to a senior supervisor, that supervisor is probably going to have a word with my colleague and hopefully their lateness will be fixed. So it does answer the main problem. So I know it's going to be on the appropriateness side and it's not going to be on the inappropriateness side. Then I'm going to look for mitigation. Is there something that's making it less worse or worse than it could be? So I'm immediately going to think escalation is mitigation because surely the first step in place is for me to talk to them um and tell them about the issue before I escalate it. And then maybe if it happen a second time, then I would escalate it. So because of that mitigation, like there's something I could do that's just a bit better. I'm gonna put appropriate but not ideal. So that's the way I tackled every single answer option. I always thought, does it answer the main problem? So I can know which side of it's on. Is it appropriate or inappropriate? Then check for mitigation. Another thing, for example, another example is apologizing for someone else's actions. So it does answer the main problem because it's apologizing, but because it's doing it for someone else's actions, that's the slight mitigation, is appropriate but not ideal, as opposed to very appropriate. So that's the strategy I kind of used. Other things to be aware of, always know what your role is. A medical student has very, very different roles to a nurse, very, very different roles to a consultant. So always like understand what the role is. So look, okay, am I a medical student? Am I a junior doctor? What am I in this role? Um, Medical students generally can't do anything. Like they can help out here and there, but most of the time they can't actually do anything. So always like you should understand what your limits are as a medical student. Most of the time it's just going to be about talking to other people, escalating it to like a doctor or something. So medical student, like a fourth or fifth year, can take a history, but they can't prescribe, they can't act unsupervised, can't diagnose, can't do anything like that. Um, And final thing is, guys, I talked about mitigation. So, things that make a problem less worse or more worse. There's some things that are never mitigated. For example, lying is always very inappropriate, regardless of if it's a white lie or if it's lying to make someone else feel better, things like that. You would think, okay, lying to make someone else feel better, it's going to make the problem slightly better. No, lying is always inappropriate, no matter what circumstance it's in. Um, Patient safety on the flip side is always appropriate. So anything that tackles a patient safety issue is always going to be very appropriate. If you guys do end up reading GMC's Good Medical Practice or briefly skimming over it, you'll see that patient safety is the core of what NHS is about, like patients. So it'll always be very appropriate. So yeah, the example I've just given you here, escalating is appropriate but rarely ideal, because it's better to just speak to a person first. Um, okay, so that is the end of my sort of presentation in terms of my strategies and stuff. Um, I'm gonna go through final takeaways, and then once I've done that, we'll do some questions and have some questions at the end. Um, so no negative marking, never leave a question blank. Guess, flag, move on. So don't underestimate the importance of just guessing, flagging, and moving on, coming back to things. Protect your pace. Very easy to dig yourself into a hole of spending so long on a question. It's such a common UCAT mistake. Even at the end, you probably think, okay, I can do it just a bit longer, a bit longer. Don't fall into that trap. As soon as you see any sort of like, this is hard, I can't do it, just skip it, move on, because often easy questions will be at the end. With VR and DM, know your question order, don't overcheck your work. Um, know which way you're going to answer the questions. QR, I thought for myself, this is very person dependent. Some people love the calculator, hugely rely on the calculator. For me, it wasn't like that. I always would minimize my calculator use, sort of eyeball options, work smart, use tips and tricks to be more efficient, skip big data. As soon as I saw anything too hard, I'll just skip it immediately, come back to it. SJT, use the little acronyms, the little things, the mitigation thing I talked about. Have a strategy for SJT. Don't be the person that just kind of looks at a question and thinks, okay, this should be the answer based roughly of what I think. That is what's gonna like I don't know, get you down in SJT. Like actually have a strategy. Like think of what I said as a formula. Does it solve the main issue? Is there mitigation? Like if you do that every time, like it makes more sense. Use cheat pat, use rule of three. My biggest other tip I forgot to mention with SJT, Medify and Medentry often aren't entirely accurate to the real UCAT. So when you're doing Medify and Medentry sets, take it with a pinch of salt. The thing that is most accurate is the official UCAT question bank. So by the time you guys end up doing your UCAT, you should have done all the question banks. I think there's four, every single one of those questions, and every single practice mock as well you should have done. Just because often they'll repeat questions, repeat scenarios and stuff. And you can kind of just know what the answer is because you've done so much SJT. So um, if you want to do anything, use the official UCAT question bank over Medify and MedEntry. And yeah, guys, practice under time conditions. Reflection is such an important thing. Reviewing why you got things wrong. After every mock I did, like I gave myself a little break, and then I would spend like an hour reviewing my mocks. Not just questions I got wrong. I reviewed every single question, questions I got right. I would look at okay, because Medify gives you like time and stuff as well. I was like, would I spend too long on this question? Is there a reason I got this question wrong? Did I notice patterns? I kept getting the same things wrong, or I was doing good on certain things. I should be prioritizing stuff. Um, and my biggest tip is if you feel like you're in a rut, like you feel like I'm doing things they're not improving, you need to take active steps to improve that then. Like there's no point in getting something wrong, noticing a pattern, but continuing doing the same thing. Like think, what do I need to change? Is there anything I can change? Try out something else, see if that works, see if that improves. If not, try out something else. It's very much a personal like process that you guys need to undergo, like an experimental thing for yourself, to see what works for you. Actively like I would actively develop my strategy like it changed so much, like different things changed so much across like the time I was practicing in until I got to what I ended up with. It wasn't like I found something and it worked for me the whole time. It was not like that. So yeah, that's the end of my slideshow. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna do some questions. I've picked out a few questions, one for each section, I think. So yeah, we'll start with VR. So I want to give you guys maybe like a minute, maybe minute and a half to just read this, and then we're gonna do a true false can't tell based off what's written. So I'll give you guys a minute. I'll just time it on my phone as well, just to read that. Um, the reason I've actually put them on a different slide is because I want you guys to like get into the habit of like being able to. Oh, the internet connection is unstable. I want you guys to get into the habit of like being able to look at a text, read it, and be able to answer based off like and remember and actively compartmentalize the info as opposed to like having to reread the text so many times. So yeah. I'll give you guys maybe 30 seconds, 30, 40 seconds. The one now. So the study proves that screen light directly causes reduced duration. The answer is false because it says may suppress melatonin. And remember I told you that thing about causation does not equal correlation, not proven. So like you really have to analyze the wording. Um, just in the text it says may, that's changed the whole like answer that we're giving. The next one is true. So if we look, it says 42 minutes of less sleep. That's directly referenced in the text. It's not something that's I've needed to infer, but if it was as well, then that also is true. So true isn't just directly referenced, it's also can be inferred. Um, so that's been directly given. And this one is can't tell. It says some students reported it, but it wasn't formally measured. So formally measured means like numerically calculated. Um, so that's the reason it's can't tell. And another thing, remember I talked to you guys about like this extreme qualifier, like if it says all, it's much more likely to be disproven, so it's much more likely to be false and can't tell. If you see all, like in most cases, the majority, like I can vouch for this, it's not going to be true. If you see an all in a question statement. Okay, we're gonna move on to DM now. So I want to give you guys this syllogism. So the one, two, three, take the statements as fact, and then the conclusion to evaluate, which I've given here as well. So I'll give you guys maybe 30 seconds on that. Okay, for the sake of time, we're gonna move on. So all doctors are trained in first aid. Some of those that are trained in, like some of the first aid trained people are volunteers, and no volunteers are paid staff. So the conclusion is some doctors are volunteers, and we have to analyze if it's true, false, can't tell. So it won't be true, false, can't tell. It'll just be yes or no in the real thing. So false and can't tell both we know, and then true is yes. The answer is can't tell. Um, so all doctors are trained in first aid. So when I say can't tell, just be no in the real thing. All doctors are trained in first aid, and then it says some of those first trained people are volunteers. Now it's easy to think, okay, that means some of the doctors are volunteers, but we don't know if the group of first aid trained people that are volunteers are also the doctors, because not all of the first aid people are doctors. Remember how I said all going one way, some going the other way? So we've got all doctors are trained in first aid. That means some first aid trained people are doctors, but we don't know if that same group are volunteers as well. Like there's groups of first aid trained people. Some are definitely doctors, some are volunteers, but we don't know if there's overlap in those groups. So that's the reason the question is no. I'm going to move on, but I'm aware that explanation was a bit difficult. So if you have a question at the end and you don't really get it, then I'm happy to go through that. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is a quick evaluating argument. This shouldn't take too long. Um, oh, okay. It's not really a question. I kind of just put it as like practice, but I've given you like the answer as well. Should universities require Okay. So the question is, should universities require all students to complete a first aid course before graduating in order to make campuses safer? Um, in emergencies. And then one of the answer options is yes, it would make campuses safer in emergencies. And I wanted you guys to evaluate that. This is the definition of circular reasoning. It's not offering anything else to the STEM, it's just telling you something that's already in the question. Does it directly address the action? Um, no. Does it directly address the outcome? Yes. But it's circular reasoning, it's too general, doesn't really have anything going for it. Okay. This is a very, very, very basic question, but the reason I want to give it to you guys is because there's a different percentage change formula. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. But instead of doing like the new minus the original over the original times by 100, which is what's often like you're kind of told to do that in school. So for example, 300 to 240 would be 300 minus 240 all over 240 times 100 brackets, all minus one. It just means that you can do it a lot quicker in your calculator, saves time, which is what QR is about. So instead of me doing like that whole thing I said, all I did was 300 divided by 240 minus one, and then immediately I could just look at the percentage and just know it in my head. Um, if you can save like even 5, 10 seconds on each question in QR, it does so much because it builds up such a bank of time, which is what QR is about. Okay, we're not going to do this question just because of time, but we're going to end with a bit of SJT. So this is the scenario. Um, a medical student Priya notices that a fellow student has copied a large portion of their reflective essay from another student's work. That acknowledgement is about to submit it for assessment. There's not much to the scenario, but that is it. So these are the ones I want you to answer. So I've given you an appropriateness one and an important one. So how appropriate is it for Priya to report the incident directly to a course tutor? So I want you guys to think, is it very appropriate, appropriate but not ideal, inappropriate but not awful, or very inappropriate? And then for the important one, it's how important is it for Priya to consider the impact on the original author whose work was copied without credit? That's to be very important, important, of minor importance, and not important at all. So I'll give you guys maybe like 20 seconds to kind of 20, 30 seconds to kind of think about that to yourselves. Okay, we're going to go through the answer options. The first one is appropriate but not ideal for the same reason that I already addressed before. Escalation is reasonable, I guess, because you might think, okay, academic integrity and stuff, but it's so much better to speak to the student directly first. And maybe if you even speak to the student, then they'll hand themselves in or like go speak to the tutor themselves. So obviously it's appropriate because it acknowledges the main issue, solves the main issue, I guess. But the mitigation is escalation is a bit unreasonable. You should probably speak to the student directly first. For the importance one, this is very important. Academic integrity, fairness, something that's so important. Like when I think of the main issue with this scenario, it's massively about professionalism, massively about lying, cheating, all of that stuff. So academic integrity is very important. Okay, guys, that is the end of the session. We've ended on time. I hope you guys found that useful. I'm aware I couldn't like talk like in massive detail about everything, but I wanted to give you guys a good overview of strategy, a good overview of everything. And then we ended up with some questions in the end as well, to give you guys a better understanding as well. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna address some of the questions in chat. You guys are free to leave if you want to, if you've got anything else to be doing, but I will be addressing some of your questions that I've got in the chat now as well. So someone's asked me, I've been doing VR for a week, but I'm still getting 4 out of 8 questions right, and it's taking me more than 2 minutes, 20 seconds per question. What would you recommend to improve my accuracy and time?